welcome to our spoiler review of the graphic novel American Vampire by Scott Snyder and guest written by Stephen King.
What?
So there are two plots. There is the beginning plot A, which is Skinner's suite in the Wild Wild West. He's robbed from the wrong people. He's finally being brought to justice, and something goes wrong. He pisses off the wrong vampire splashes a bit of his blood on Sweet, and Sweet ends up becoming a vampire. When he finally escapes from his grave...
Because finally escapes from his grave. That's the thing, like, he is content in his box for a very long time.
Yeah, he just kind of sits there, kind of like too weak to claw his way out, I guess.
And it's not even like when he finally gets out, he's like, finally I'm out, I'm going, It's just like, okay, I'm out.
He's like, surprise, motherfucker, where's my candy?
Yeah, like, legitly, that's what he says. It's just like, I want candy. First spot he goes, candy store.
But anyway, so he finally gets out, and he goes on a revenge rampage against all the people who kind of were putting him in jail long, long ago. That's about it.
Pretty simple. Origin story.
Yeah. And then the story runs another plot in the 1920s following a woman named Pearl, who is an actress and a waitress trying to get by, waiting for her big break. But there's a problem, and she ends up meeting some of the producers who are running Hollywood, and they are vampires.
And they eat her.
They leave her for dead. She's about to die when in walks Skinner Sweet, who gives her some of his blood, and he's like, go nuts! Follow your instincts!
I left you a set of rules. Yay! There's a guy in your closet. Yay!
Have fun! So, it turns out that the vampires that were snacking on her were the ancient vampires who ended up turning him back in the day, and they've been hunting Sweet ever since.
Because the thing about Sweet is special. Sweet is the first American vampire. It's a different breed of vampire, so he can go out in the sun, he can do a bunch of different things they can't do, and so there's that kind of class war, which is totally thinly veiled. Aristocracy versus American dream, you know, like democracy and no.
Versus like old world money and pedigree obsession. So, anyway, so he releases Pearl on his enemies, which she promptly takes down, no problems.
Realizes she's into that guy who she's been talking to named Henry. Feeds on Henry because she's weak. You know, the sexy blood thing.
And he's like, yeah, well, I guess I'll see you later. Have fun.
We'll probably, you know, meet up eventually.
Okay.
And she goes out with Henry, and that's it.
So what did you like about?
I liked, we talked about it in the review, the representation of the old world vampires, because looking at them, they looked slimy. Like,
yeah,
they're like pasty and kind of gray, like, you know, and just slimy, like you didn't want to touch them, and they were ugly, and
very Victorian haircuts.
Yeah, and then comparing that to the younger vampires, because there were younger Hollywood vampires who were actors and actresses, and they were kind of like the in-between between the old world and the new world, I would say, where they're kind of still riding on the coattails of the old world, giving them a leg up in the new world, but still they're a lot more fun than the other guys.
I mean, I liked the vampire designs. They were pretty creepy, especially, like, you know, Sweet and Pearl. They have, like, these super long fingernails, and their jaw just, like, opens and widens. And
I think my favorite panel of Skinner Sweet is when he comes out of the water for the very first time. It's just somewhat glorious. Just, like, the face and the hair and just the teeth. He looks like a sea monster. Like one of the mermen from Harry Potter. Like, you don't want to run into that.
Yeah. And I mean, Skinner Sweet is, like, amoral. There is nothing about him that is really redeemable at all. He doesn't even have his own set of rules or a moral compass. He just kind of does whatever he wants, kills whoever he wants, and damn the world. Which I guess is interesting, but if you're having him represent the American dream, well, then it starts to get a little problematic, especially if you're not being self-reflexive.
Even if it's not a big theme thing, then it's just lazy writing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh, I can do whatever I want, flip a coin, I'm Two-Face, you know, like...
Yeah. If you're not being self-reflexive, then it's lazy writing, because you're like, hey, here's a symbol, this is what this represents, and then you're like, screw it, this is more interesting, this'll sell, and then you just kind of screw your symbol halfway through.
I'm interested to see where it goes later on in the story, if he kind of develops some kind of personal set of morals, or has at least a plan for what he kind of wants in the future, you know, like, isn't just flying by the seat of his pants, because that could make him more interesting, or it could just make him really, really boring. So this is the first 5 issues of the comic. There are about 10 volumes for bind-ups. We're a little bit late jumping on this boat, so we have a lot to read through, so I'm hoping that
it works out, and it's actually being very clever.
I like the fact that we get to go through different time periods. Like, that's so cool.
I'm very excited for kind of the front half of the century, where, you know, like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. That could be really cool, because can you imagine, like, hippie vampire? Hippie vampire would be amazing. Or, like, vampires involved in, like, the Nixon Watergate scandal. Like, I really want them to get into, like, the political stuff, and, like, you know, like the Stonewall riots or something like that. I want to see stuff like that through the eyes of a vampire, because that, as far as I know, has never been done before. And if they don't do it, I'm going to be so sad.
So I liked it.
I did too.
It was fun.
But I have my fingers crossed for the next ones. So that was our review of American Vampire, guys. If you liked our review, we are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter,
Tumblr.
Yes, all those lovely places. So find us and let us know what you think of this